Coach Adam with Soccer Roots. I had an amazing question, which was, could you just, because my background's in child psychology, sociology, and personality profiling and stuff like that. That's kind of what I am trying to master and have set myself off as a master of, and have combined that with my soccer coaching. And I think that's really my specific skill set now. So someone had asked me, based off of behavior that you see from children or from adults, what could you kind of tell me is the cause? I call this, my mentor Danny Johnson had said, you follow the fruit to the root. This is an important thing when you're dealing with anything to do with trauma. You want to look at what's the fruit being kind of bared by the tree effectively, all the way down to the root of the issue. If you can then solve it at the root, then that's effectively solved at the fruit. So the first one is, if a child or a person is primarily rude, what is that caused by? And that's quite simple. That's a learned behavior. Rude is a learned behavior. Simple as that. So when we at Soccer Roots, we have trial class always. It's to make sure the kid is on a good place from a manners standpoint, and from a physical standpoint, that there's going to be no violence. And our job is to help them, but we always want to make sure that they come in still at an element of a level so that we can kind of take it from there. So rude is a learned behavior, usually from the dominant parent. The next one is lying. If a kid lies a lot, where does that behavior come from? Now, I've written these down because I wanted to make sure that I got it spot on for you. So lying primarily comes from an overreaction from somewhere in their life, in the past, which has meant that they've created or have learned to create stories to protect from what they deem as mistakes, right? Or errors. We're so fearful of making mistakes or not being good enough that if we are given this criticism or punishment or whatever it may be, usually an overreaction, or what they deem as an overreaction, of course. So if you're a parent watching this and you think, well, I don't think I overreacted. Well, in the context of a 2 or an 8 or a 14-year-old, was it an overreaction to them? Most likely. If they've then created these stories, it's simply a defense mechanism in place to not deal with that, right? It's just, I don't want to deal with that, so I'm going to create a story and mum or dad will go away. So that's really where lying behavior comes from. Scared, a kid who's constantly scared. I assume you mean in general behavior with this question. So scared can, I'm not talking about like horror films, but this can come from parents helping too much, funnily enough, helping too much and making life too easy for their kid. Now, of course, as a parent or whatever, a guardian, we're always doing our best to help children. But if it's made too easy for them and they're protected so much, they don't actually develop that kind of necessary fight or flight instinct, and they can't deal with problems themselves. You hear me talk a lot about failure tolerance. This is directly related to this. So they have to suffer, they have to fail to grow. So when you have a child who's constantly scared, it's because you've sheltered them too much, effectively. So that's where that comes from. If a child doesn't speak up for themselves, this is something that isn't as common. I haven't noticed this as much, but if you have a child who doesn't speak up as much, that's usually two things. That's either the parents just step in and speak on their behalf, which is obviously tragic, and you don't want to do that, or they can be humiliated from public correction too much. This can happen from a parent. This can even happen from teachers. So if you're noticing that your child isn't speaking up as much and you don't think it's related to your own house, it's coming from somewhere else where they're being humiliated, or they're effectively now fearful of kind of voicing their own opinion in case it's wrong, or they deem it as wrong. The next one is self-esteem issues. If a kid is suffering from self-esteem issues, then it's usually spanning from you telling them how to exist and who they are, rather than letting them kind of organically find out who they are. Something that you'll hear me say a lot is that you're always trying to create a version 1 of them. You want them to become a version 1 of them, not some warped, dodgy version 2 of you or your partner. That's very important. So instead, you want to encourage not just their kind of victories, but encourage their errors and encourage their mistakes. That's what parenting is. It's not trying to make it perfect, because even your perfect is in the context of your perfect, right? So it's an impossible thing to correct. You can just let them discover themselves. Otherwise, yeah, you do get self-esteem issues, which I'm pretty sure that we are doing our best to make sure these don't turn into adult problems. This is what this conversation is all about. Kids taking things from others, even though he already has a lot or she already has a lot. This is an interesting one. This is big and applicable to Hanukkah, Christmas, when you get presents and stuff. So if a kid's taking from other people a lot, but they already have tons. I've heard this said to me. Parents say, but he has so many toys. I don't get why he's taking. Often it's because they're toys given rather than toys chosen. You're better off letting your kid choose one toy and letting them choose it, and making it cognitive to them, saying you get one toy a year or 2 toys a year, rather than here's a million toys and you're giving it to them. They have to make that choice, right? So when they make that choice, they don't need that incessant need to steal or take from others, because they're content. So that's a very good one. If you're looking at that over Christmas, there's the answer. It might have gone off in your head right now. Jealousy is the next one. Jealousy is usually a pretty clear-cut one. It's kind of straight from the parents, whether it be like, oh, that guy has a nice car, wish I had that, or oh, look at that dude's house, oh, look how big that house is, oh, wish I could have that house. All of this just gets projected onto the kid, and they're listening, they're always listening. And all they hear in this sense is that you're not kind of respecting what you've achieved. We live in Los Angeles, we have water, we have a roof over our head. These alone are achievements for the rest of the world. We're living in the 2%, but the 2% look to the 0.5%, and such is life. Even the second richest man in the world, I'm sure, is upset that he's not Jeff Bezos. So learned behavior of jealousy and comparisons to others, and a lack of fulfillment from not feeling satisfied from what you have, from what you've shown them, and that creates a feeling of worthlessness and never being content with anything, which is a tragic way to go down. So, and then the final one is anger. Anger can come from they don't get enough praise, so they're trying to find it from a negative avenue instead. So I had a girl not too long ago at a school, and she started off being nice to me, but I was working, so I couldn't break away because she was shouting from so far away, which I don't think is the way to get someone's attention. So she was shouting, and I acknowledged her. I was like, hey, shouting isn't the right way to get attention from me. And so then she started seeking my reactions from negative standpoints. She just wanted a reaction. I'm not going to give her that, because I'm not going to teach her that you find love or you find a reaction through negative avenues. So jealousy, anger, all of these things tie into that. Anger specifically will be tied into that. Just acknowledge them and let them know that you hear them. I often say, I see you, I hear you. It's a really good way just to let a kid know. It's literal. And hopefully those kind of emotions have been explained to you in basic psychology, basic child psychology, of where the fruit and the root lie. If you have any questions or thoughts on that, please leave a comment below, and I'm happy to answer them. Thanks for listening. Coach Adam with Soccer Roots.